Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Half Watt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. I am super happy to have a guest in studio today. Hello.
Hello.
Tracy Teutsch. So Tracy and I worked together at PSI. She was a manager up in the, the Seattle branch.
Bothell, yeah.
Bothell branch. And so I met her there. Super talented. She subsequently left and pursued other things. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So
Absolutely.
So tell us about yourself first. Who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you really?
Oh, that's such a great question. I will start with how I got into the industry in the first place. So I know you're all going to be really impressed, but I have a fine arts degree, and you can see how that naturally led itself to, okay, it didn't. But I
have a degree in underwater basket weaving.
Yeah,
with a minor in psychology. And
so I landed in a project coordinator role, a project manager role at the old Simplex way back. And let me just say, in case you didn't gather from the fine arts degree, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about electrical wiring and how things came together.
I did not know that, by the way. It's still making me laugh. And I had no idea to fine arts degree.
And so one of the things that was really compelling to me is that I started in fire alarm at the old school Simplex in a long time ago. You talked about young blood. I'm not it. But anyway, one of the things that was so wonderful, though, is that there were so many great technicians there. And so the techs really took me under their wings. And man, I can't tell you how many people drew pictures for me to help me understand circuits and how everything came together. And so I had a very early appreciation for the technicians that I worked with. And so with that, that's really where my career started, and really where how it stayed all through my years at PSI as well. Okay. So I always had a great deal of respect for all the technicians that I worked with, and have so many pictures that they drew for me over the years to really help me understand how all of the systems came together. And I really took that very seriously, and so I did spend a lot of time trying to understand how that looked and what battery calcs were. And so that was really my start. And so over the years, and this really leads to where I am today and what I'm doing today, is that over a couple of decades, I was really surprised at the lack of kind of new people coming in, and I had been exposed to so many great technicians that it was surprising to me that I wasn't seeing kind of new people coming in to not to take their places, but to be taught and to come into the industry. And we were also so struggling to find people. And so my last role, I was GM for a couple of branches of PSI.
When I first met you, you were project managing.
I started as sales at PSI.
You were doing sales. And then it was, so you never really did project managing then? You were always in sales.
I did project management at Simplex. And
but
so
not
at other
PSI.
Companies, correct. Yeah. When I came on to PSI,
so I asked
sales.
that because when the reason I was impressed with watching you and when I came up there that time, right? And we were up there for training on software or something like that.
Yeah.
And I watched you sit down and collaborate in a way that we weren't really doing that in my branch. The way and Carrie and I both looked at that and went, "That's what we want." That were the three of you got together, and sat down in the conference room that we were in and laid all this stuff out and talked about it from soup to nuts, as Travis likes to say, all the way through.
Yeah.
And so and you didn't miss it. And I don't forget, it was you and who else was it?
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Carissa or Nikki, one of those, and maybe
it was
Brian?
Nikki. Oh, Nikki for sure.
Yeah.
I think it was Nikki, Carissa, and you is who it was. And Carrie and I walked away and went, we have to have that. Like, we have to steal that.
Yeah,
because
you could even borrow. You didn't have to steal. You could have.
So,
but yes.
So you were in a sales position at that point.
I was.
Okay.
And for me, collaboration has always been king.
Mm-hmm.
I really value the other members of my team always, because without them, we don't have anything, right? And so there was never a time that, one thing I've never been accused of and hope to never be, but is really thinking that it's all about me, because it's not. And so I really valued the other people on the team. I really valued, I never put together a bid without coordinating with both my PM, whoever was working with me on that, who would be working on the project down the road, and without coordinating with technicians, making sure if there were any questions that I had technically.
So let me see if I get this right.
Yeah.
You as a salesperson actually talked to your project manager and coordinator, your general manager, who Nikki was at the time, the main technician involved in the job.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
I'm sure
make sure people know. Yes. Yeah.
I hope those who are listening out there are hearing the correct steps in how we do jobs. Okay, I'm over it.
We had a lot of fun with it, honestly, as well, because I also think there's a great deal of fun in collaboration. And so not only were we we were working to set it up successfully from the beginning. And so getting the buy-in of the rest of the team, making sure that if there's anything that I wasn't looking at or wasn't considering in the bid, that it was something we addressed early.
Sure.
So with that, it really, for me, all of those players were so important. And so watching fewer people coming into the trades, it was something that just didn't feel right.
Okay.
And we were really struggling to hire people.
So you went eventually to be the GM.
Correct.
At that branch.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that you discovered was you couldn't get anybody through the door.
Correct. And so at that point, we were having weekly meetings with our recruiting team down here, with our ops manager, Andy Dural at that time, and every week going through all of our open positions. Every week talking about all the different sites we were posting things on. And for me, one of the other pieces was it all felt like those other platforms didn't consider us. They weren't really focused on us, and they weren't built for us. Okay. And I thought, there's got to be better. There's got to be a better way to do this. And one other side story for me was during COVID. So I was the GM during COVID.
That was a fun time.
Yeah, that was great.
I certainly enjoyed it.
That was great. And one of the things that really struck me through that time is that my husband, who is a lovely person, is in technology. And so for technology, he was working. I know, I'm sorry. I meant that good. But he was working from home along with all the rest of his buddies. And he's a very extroverted soul, so that sucked for him. But we had the flip where, we're still having to have people go out. Before we really knew what was going on, we didn't know if it was safe yet. And so we were having bi-weekly meetings with our inspections teams, with our field teams. How's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? Do you guys have the right safety equipment? Are you feeling good? And they would come back with I don't want to go in this space. I don't feel good about. And so it was just such a strange time. And I'm watching, and all you're hearing on the news during that time is, the new work from home thing. And I'm there's some of us that aren't working from home. Yeah. And so again, that was
every single day there.
Yeah.
My guys were out there every day. I didn't say guys, but guys and gals were out there every day. Yeah. Every day out there blowing smoke and pulling wire. Nothing changed for them.
Yeah.
It just it's hardcore. So the whole time they're just doing what they've always done. There's just less people on the freeway.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I love that part.
there was the upside.
It was the upside,
traffic.
especially when Seattle, where you had to actually
for sure
fight your way to work every day.
Yeah. And so it was all of those different pieces really played into why I felt compelled to start this new business and to jump and go do it. And for me, it was, I want to make sure that the trades are seen because the trades do very valuable work. And it isn't until people are impacted by, oh, that's weird, I'm trying to call this plumbing company and they can't get me in for a couple of months, that people start to go, hey, what's wrong with that? Why aren't they, and
why does it take so long?
Yeah.
And if you do get somebody immediately, it's like, is this a good company?
Yeah. And if you did, would you send me the number?
My door. What the hell's going on?
Yeah. And it just felt like this part of the world, which is so critical to maintaining our infrastructure and moving us forward, is something that too many people don't see.
Okay.
And I wanted people to be seen.
So you left.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Specifically to do that.
I did. Yeah, it was really wise. I jumped off a cliff and I forgot to check if I had a parachute or wings. But
that's a very gutsy thing to do. I mean, this was right after COVID.
Some might describe it as stupid. But I like gutsy better. That sounds better.
Gutsy is good.
But it was something I believed in very strongly.
So when you left, you left specifically to go do this.
Correct.
That was your goal.
Yes.
And this is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. You're like, I see that.
We are human here. We all need to take drinks. So
it was just a small sip.
The studio is a very inviting. For those of you who have not seen the inside of the studio, this is a very
cool.
relaxing place, a very cool place. So,
yeah.
And we do serve adult beverages from time to time. So
exactly.
You started to put this thing together, and tell me your process and tell everybody the name of it. Give them the website so they know exactly where to go.
So the website is realwork.com.
Realwork.com. That's really hard to spell.
Exactly. And there's nothing fancy about the spelling because in my world it's just real work.
So
solid real work.
At Real Work, your goal is to do what? How would you describe? What's the elevator pitch, as they say in the sales world?
Anybody who listens, who knows me, will know that I'll stumble over an elevator pitch because I always want to say, there's so much to this story. But ultimately, what I'm creating is a platform to connect the trades. Okay. And it's focused entirely on the trades. It is for the needs of the trades. I'm not trying to be everything for everybody. Mm-hmm. I want to service the trades.
So is it for the tradesperson or for the clients or both?
It's actually for trade workers and contractors and employers. So it's really to connect those.
So not necessarily for the end customers.
Not necessarily the end customer. Correct.
But it is absolutely for the companies, so that there's a repository of skilled labor that they can at least look through. That's not just, and I'm not going to try to throw anybody under the bus, but it's not like LinkedIn where you have 1,000 different things going on out there.
Yeah.
But it's more specific for is it just electrical trades?
No.
What? You mean there's other things besides electrical?
It is definitely focused on skilled trades.
Yeah. Skilled trade.
Yeah. And also really there are multiple layers of the goal, because not only do I want to create that space where it brings us together, and that's really step one, is just bringing together those of us who are here now. And, literally at one point, during the recruiting meetings that I mentioned before, I would sit and jot notes down about how much money and how many platforms we were posting across. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like it was, this big giant search for the needle in a haystack. And mm-hmm. so, if you just shoot it out to everybody, maybe you'll find one. So first is just creating a space. But I also think it's important that we look at a new generation. And one of the things that I think construction maybe hasn't stayed up on is they're still trying to do things in the same old way and expecting that they're going to get different results out of it. Construction is a pretty rigid industry. It's pretty rigid in its approach to things. And yet construction is also a fascinating industry because the work can be so cyclical and seasonal, and it's not necessarily always a consistent stream. Mm-hmm. And so that gives a lot of space where we can both service employers better and where we can service workers better. And so one of the pieces that and it's funny, I'm also, since we're launching in another couple of weeks, there are certainly pieces and parts to it that I don't want to talk about just yet, only because I'm
you don't need to.
But one of the things that we're really doing is we have put so much time and effort into the thought around the infrastructure of this site, mm-hmm. and really thinking through what are the things, and I will admit, coming from the fire alarm industry, there was a lot of thought of the licenses and certifications that our folks earn.
let's take I'm going to write that down for a second. Let's talk about licenses.
Was that more than a 30-second elevator?
No. And the reason I'm saying, but that's okay. So just in the electrical trade, and just in the low voltage electrical trade, mm-hmm. and just in the fire alarm portion of the low voltage electrical trade, in the Sound area, Puget Sound area, or Seattle, and I think I'm encapsulating that correctly.
Yeah.
How explain to the listeners just how damn difficult it is to do business and to service a client from the south part of the Sound to the north part of the Sound. How many licenses do you have to how many licenses does one have to own to do work in the?
So one thing that's been really fun is to look across states and to really analyze and look at what kind of requirements the different states have. So now circling back to Washington, because it is one of the most complex that I have found. Shockingly, even over California, it appears to be more complex.
Much more complex.
Yeah, you can literally have an inspector, a fire alarm inspector, mm-hmm. with 20 years of experience who is qualified to do a test on a high-rise building in Bellevue, who cannot cross the lake to test in Seattle without an additional certification. Okay. So it gets very complex.
So jurisdictionally, my experience in Washington, just as headbangingly difficult.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, if you have a limited energy license, an ELO 6 in Washington, that doesn't mean squat. All that means is that now you can work on low voltage, but you cannot work on fire alarm systems without a nice set 2. That gives you those two things. And then if you happen to work in southern Washington and you want to work in Vancouver, you have to have an endorsement from the Vancouver Fire Marshal to work on anything there. And if you do sprinklers in Oregon, where you don't have to have anything but a familiarity, in Portland, you obviously have to have a certificate of fitness. That doesn't mean squat when you go above the river.
Yeah.
In order to do sprinkler work in Washington, you have to have a testing.
And a plumber's license.
And all these other...
And a NICET.
Yeah, all these other... Yeah, NICET too. So all these things, that's just in the simple area of Washington, the southern part of Washington. But once you get in the Sound, you're exactly right. It's an entirely different ball game. So
absolutely.
How difficult is it as a contractor to handle... I'm going to send an inspection crew to Bellevue, but they can't do any work in Seattle, and they can't work in Everett or wherever. I don't know all the names of the places.
No, you got plenty.
One big gigantic.
I wish it was just one
city.
No, it is very complex, and that's another thing that we're really doing our best to help support is not only is it complex to manage those, it's complex for both the worker and the employer and the contractor.
So what part of the website's going to be able to take your certifications and lay them out. And so contractors who are looking for people, looking for talent can say, oh, look, this guy has got the ability to do work in these jurisdictions. That's where I'm working. All my work
Correct.
happens to be in Everett, so I want somebody who can work in Everett. I don't give a damn if they can work across the Sound. Or I need somebody who can work in multiple locations. So your site will help connect. So as a tradesperson, I could put all my certs in, which then contractors that can look up and say, hey, you've got what I need.
Exactly.
I need you to come do work for me.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And one of the things, I also refer to it as like flipping a resume on its head, right? Because in a traditional world of resumes, which are kind of a pet peeve of mine, to be honest, because, but all of the data that mattered the most to us, licenses, education, certs, are all at the bottom of a resume. And in the trades, those are the most important. And so it's like flipping that resume on its head and making sure you're dialing into the pieces that are most relevant.
So you're starting off by being able to filter out, I just want to see people with an ELO 6 and a NICET 2 and this and that. Okay.
Correct.
Good. So that it allows you to really narrow it down. So here we go, kids. The more certificates you have, the more competencies you've shown in the more jurisdictions, the more marketable you are. Correct?
Correct.
The more money you command.
Correct.
As long as you're not a clown. And and I mean that. And I know people who can test. I know people who can pass a lot of tests. I know people who can pass tests like nobody's business.
I do too.
And they can't tell me which end of a smoke pole blows smoke. So it doesn't mean squat to me. But if you've got the jurisdictions covered and you know where smoke comes out of the pole, then you could test.
Correct.
Simply.
And that's one of the things too.
Okay.
Absolutely, to your point. The other thing, as we collect more data, as we see what employers are looking for, we will also be circling back to workers to help people understand what kind of licenses or certifications that they can add and that they can earn that can benefit them. That
so
if they can earn a few extra dollars.
Them. So like if you
Correct.
By the way, if you happen to go across the Sound and go here and get your certificate in whatever.
Correct.
Everett, then you can go do it would open up this market to you.
Correct.
Okay, so
and also help and really help to give that feedback from the industry. So it's really part of my intention is to help close up some of that communication and making sure that if we're seeing a whole bunch of employers are looking for certification X, Y, or Z, then we want to make sure that gets out to workers so that people know, hey, we've got a lot of contractors that have been looking up this certification, and here are the hourly rates that we're seeing attached to that, so that people know, and so that people can understand what they should be looking at and how they can benefit.
So
themselves.
you're providing, at least from the technician's point of view towards the contractor's point of view, hey, if I jump through these hoops, I'll be this marketable.
Correct.
And I can probably command this wage. So you're kind of peeling the onion back and showing people kind of what they're worth.
Correct.
I'm going to take a segue here. Kids, when we talk about this, if I know I'm making X amount of dollars working for company A, and I run into a technician working for company B and they're making $4 more an hour, it's maybe not intuitive to know why or how. Like, gosh, should I jump over to that company? Should I go to this company B, because, the benefits are better or whatever. So you're sort of kind of pulling the curtains back and kind of opening up the pay structure so people can see. And if you're in this industry, you should be making significantly more money now than you did a decade ago. And I mean significantly. What I was paying journeyman when I was an operations manager is extraordinarily low ball at this game. And a friend of mine I just had a conversation with before we started the podcast, is just been offered a serious amount of money. And these guys have not turned out all that long. They're not. We're not talking journeymen that have been journeymen for 20 years who are now making, 105, 110, 120,000 a year. These are journeymen that have been out for 3-4 years, proven their worth, and they're making bank. So,
for sure.
For sure.
Absolutely. There is so much opportunity in the trades right now. And that's something that all of the data that I've seen shows that the need for the trades is actually going to continue to rise. It's not dropping. So they're projecting in the next 10 years another increase of about 10 to 14% in need. And what we've seen is a decline in actual classes and trade classes and shop programs in high schools. And so really we're behind in our bringing people back into the industry.
You've got to be kidding me. So do you mean that the children's coming out, the children's coming out are not jumping into the trades? What are they doing?
Sorry. All that was in my head there was sarcastic, and I was trying to suck that back in. You know what's funny though?
It bothers me because I really want. It's as passionate as you are in this. I'm as passionate as speaking to people and getting them into the trades early. And every time I'm teaching a group of students, and I've got a kid in there who's 18, I'm like, you do not know how smart you are doing this now at 18 or 19 or 20 and not at 27, 30, 35, 40, 45, 60, changing careers at the end of your life. You're doing it at the beginning when you have the whole world your oyster.
And one of the things too, and I'll probably get the saying wrong, but in the past, people considered picking up a trade as something that you always had, right? You could always find work. It was something solid you could fall back on. And I really want to try to bring some of that back because I really think it's important because, I'm going to even flip and sorry, I'm going to pick on employers for just a minute.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to pick on them for just a bit. Employers over time have also, in my words, I think also take advantage of workers, particularly because, frankly, there's so few. And so our existing workers do get overworked. And there has to be a balance. People need to have a life as well as work. Okay. You cannot expect people to work 24/7 and think that that's okay. And I do think that there has to be a balance between hardworking and committed to the work you said you were going to do, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have said you were going to take this contract for 3 months, then freaking do the contract for 3 months, right? You said you were going to do it. Here are the rules. We both agreed to what that was up front. And so you have a commitment and that employer does as well, right? You come up with the rules of engagement. And I do think that employers, I know this is going to shock a lot of people, but I do think that employers need a little pressure on them as well to be reminded that one of the things that I've seen and heard is that if you have seen somebody who was in the trades for a very long time who walked out feeling very beat up and not appreciated at the end of it, that is not a great selling point to bring somebody new into the trades. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of really lovely things about the trades. There are great things about it. And I've had so many, again, I told you how great my techs were, how much they taught me. But I just think that there has to be a balance. And I feel like one of the roles of real work is also to find some better balance there because we need people to maintain our infrastructure and to build our infrastructure and frankly to make changes to our infrastructure as we move forward. And I think that we have thought forever, well, this younger generation, they just need to conform.
Right, and you've heard a lot of like the younger generation doesn't work like the older. You've heard the same bat squeeze that I have.
Yes.
Where, these millennials don't know how to work. And that is pure bullshit.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And so that's where I think that rather than us expecting them to conform all the time, we also need to adapt because there are good things about the way that they look at the world. Mm-hmm. And we need to open up our eyes to that and find that space in the middle where we both can service each other. That sounds like a very bad phrase. Did that sound bad?
No,
but
it does
basically
not.
that we get to take care of.
I've always taught that it's a set of scales, a set of balances.
Okay.
And if I'm working for an employer and I'm weighing my benefits on one side and my workload with my benefits and pay and all that good stuff with my work. And when I feel like I'm compensated and I'm giving my employer what they're looking for, we're in equilibrium, the scales are balanced. When the scales get out of balance, then I start to go, hey, things are out of balance here. My workload is too high, and sometimes it's not pay. I don't necessarily want to jerk $200,000 a year if my personal life sucks. I won't. And the millennials are like that too. They're like, look, there's no reason to sit there and look like my uncle and my father and my grandfather who worked themselves to the grave, and at the very end of it got a watch and nothing else. Yeah. So they're going, look, the work-life balance has got to match. These kids want to go out. They want to ride their motorcycles. They want to run their jet skis. They want to run their boats. They want to hunt. They want to fish. They want to enjoy their life. And in order to do that, they've got to make money to do all those things.
Yes.
And my youngest kid is literally has every toy he's ever wanted, and he's just been changing out and getting better and better toys to live the life he wants to live. And he does that.
Yeah.
And we can look at him and go, wow, I don't know how he does it, but he does it. But the kid's got, dune buggies and boats, and that is the way he has wanted to live since he was that tall. And so his work-life balance is what he's happy with, and he just changed from one career to another. And he's super happy with it. Now they're teaching him how to drive a truck to get a Class A license. I'm tickled pink to watch him make this transition. He looks better. He's happier. He's healthier. He's everything about it has been a positive, including his pay. So you're right. When that, I do have to agree. When those scales are out of balance, and in my own personal life, I go, okay, are out of balance. I need to make those changes, and I don't want to make those changes by rattling someone's cage. I go, change. We got to do something. When my home life gets to the point where or my personal life gets to the point that now the scales are so out of balance that this is no longer fun, I bolt. So, and I did. This is not going to work for me. I need to go someplace where my scales are back in balance. And people are like that too. And I know people who have stayed in jobs for all their lives, scales out of balance, and then to get to the end of it, go, well, look at all the battle scars on my shell. I made it to the end. What kind of crap is that?
I know.
Your life sucked, and it sucked all the way up to this point. Now you're retired. You're going to sit around and get big and explode, and it's going to suck me even more. So, I want these folks that are coming into the trades to recognize the fact that you don't need to blow $100,000 or $200,000 on a degree. I mean, I'm not saying don't go to college. But you don't need to blow all that money and go get an associate's degree at a community college.
Were you picking on my fine arts degree?
Nope, I am not picking on anybody's degree. I am. One of the guys I work with has got a very high degree. He's super cerebral. He's super good tech, really good tech. There's nothing he can't touch, he can't fix. And he looks back at his degree and go, I wish I hadn't spent that time doing that. I wish I had been doing this. And
one of the things that I would love to interject on that is I think about those, and hopefully everybody has seen them. Some of the, you see a little kid who loves to kind of take things apart and trying to figure out how that, what I would love to see is us get to the point where we actually encourage that, where it's like, I think of some of the techs that I knew. I would love to talk about one of my techs in particular. I was going to talk about Brian McAdams. You just blast it out there. Sorry, Brian, if you're out there. Brian. But one of the things that I used to love is I used to call him my master Jedi. Because man, I don't know how he could solve problems, but he could literally, I remember a stray one at the DoubleTree Hotel, and we had this really weird fault on the panel. We sent out numerous people. Nobody could figure it out. He finally found somebody had installed a NAC panel up above a ceiling in a really weird place. It was not shown on drawings. Nobody knew it was there. And I'm like, it was the force that, how did he find it? And so for me, it's really, we benefit as a society from different skills. We need people who are fabulous at cutting hair. We need people who are great at cooking. We need people who are great at fixing things. And I just feel like what we've done is we've narrowed down the paths that we consider okay. And that's where I think that we need to open up our eyes. I think that there are certain kids that I've got a kid who loves geology. He's always been into rocks since he was a little teeny tiny. And so that was a good path for him. But it doesn't mean that I think college is for everybody. I think college is a great option, but not for everybody.
So I don't know what you're going to do in geology without a degree.
He's a hydrogeologist. Yeah.
You're flat out gonna if you're totally into chemistry, you probably got to go to college.
Yeah.
And I get that.
And also,
but if you're a tradesperson, right? Really, let's get you out there in the trades. Let's get you bending pipe. Let's get you soldering pipe. Let's get you doing whatever, because this particular website covers more than just the electrical trade. And right,
it does, yes.
And then you can take night school to pick up any academic stuff that you need. And if you decide, hey, I've got to go into project management, boom, go right into it then.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things, to your point, one thing that I've seen throughout my career is how many people have started as an apprentice in the field and gone on to do lots of different things. It is a great avenue to lead to a career path if that's what you want. And, I've known many people who went on to own their own businesses, lots of people who moved into project management, moved into sales, it is also a really good education. And it's an education that you get paid for instead of having to pay for. so there's definitely advantages.
It works out better for you to receive money and educational benefits for most employers to go to school than it is to just go drop money up front that you may not need because you're.
Yeah. And you know what? If there's something that, you've always known you wanted to do X, Y, or Z, sure, awesome, go for it. But I've also seen a whole lot of people that I knew one person in particular that I won't mention a name because will be listening to this, but I know really wanted to be a mechanic, wanted to work on engines in trucks, and that was not really considered in his, with folks around him, that wasn't considered the right path. And so he was directed in a different way, and it's something that I know he always looks back on because it was something that he really enjoyed. Yeah. And so those are the places where I think we need to expand our minds. And, there are people who are so skilled at those different things. And I want to see us embrace that more.
I like that. We talked about high school students coming out and not necessarily knowing that these trades exist.
Yes.
I thought about a business model a long time ago before I started teaching for IEC and JTC about gathering high school students and busing them to different job sites to show them different skills. And I'm not talking just construction sites. I'm saying, hey, let's take a batch of high school kids and let's go to Intel and see what a clean room looks like. Okay, let's take the batch of high school kids and let's take them to a hospital and show them what happens in a hospital. Let's take a batch of high school kids and take them to a dairy. Who the hell knows what?
Yeah.
And you could actually make a business out of saying, hey, like I have a relationship with this particular employer. They're willing to take a group of high schoolers through once a week for Wednesday, from 2 to 3. Let's go to all the different area high schools, pick up the kids who are interested to see what jobs are out there, to expose their brains to the truth of what's going on when you get it. Because when you get out of high school, when that diploma drops, in my world, it was like, oh, well, I'm going to go boogie board for 9 months and I'm going to the Navy. and then I fell into that whole world. And 9 years later, I popped out, went, the hell was that? Now what am I going to do? Like, I have no idea. I still had no idea when I came out of the military what potential I had, and nobody nobody. I could put a list of equipment this long on a resume, and no one cared. They didn't know what the hell any of that stuff was. Oh, you work on a Slick 32 V3. What the hell is that?
That's actually another piece that I really want to dive into more. A friend of mine was a lifetime Marine, and of course, Scott Delaney used to be one of the owners of PSI, and he was military. Oh my gosh,
he was in Navy.
That's what I thought. Okay, Navy, and we had a lot of other people who came out of the military, and helping to translate their experiences in the military and what they've learned in their education, and helping translate that out into the real world is another thing that we really want to target. We started kind of exploring
how exciting that is to me, because there's a lot of military folks. The Army does a really good job helping folks translate what they do into, but the Army is kind of on the forefront of that.
Okay.
The Navy is now, but there's other branches. Yeah, they have their way. And there's a group, Orion up there and stuff like that will help recruit. Say, hey, look, I've got a guy who's a fire controlman. This is what he does. He would be good because he's got an electronic background, and I see folks come through like that.
Yeah.
But that's a one-directional thing. You're about to leave the Navy, and I'm picking on the Navy, but you're about to leave the military, and so you go to this recruiter, and then he begins to drop you and your resume into different fields.
Yeah.
Fire alarm or electrical might be one of them, but you're not. If you come out of certain branches, you don't have an equivalent license yet.
Right.
You're going to have to go, and if that state will accept it, hey, you worked 9 years in this field. That doesn't mean squat as a civilian.
I know. One of the things that and again, this is where I'm very bad at a 30-second elevator clip, because there's so many things that I would love to be able to do down the road. And one of those things is how we help translate between states as well. Because diving into, I think I've so far I want to say about 9 or 10 states maybe so far, where I've really done a deep dive into certifications, licenses, have looked into national things as well. And there's so much complexity because there's so much inconsistency. And on one hand, I respect that. I'm not trying to stick everybody into a box, but it makes it really difficult for workers and for employers when you're navigating so many different rules and regulations in different places. So at the end of the day, it makes it far more complex to navigate that world. And so
it is very common. I'm just going to take it for example. I know an electrician, you know him as well, who started his career in Massachusetts. There's nothing he can't wire. There's nothing he can't program. There's nothing he can't fix. He picks up a license as an ELO 1 and works in Washington. Oregon then says, you can reciprocate your license to be a journeyman in Oregon, except if you reciprocated to get your license in Washington. So he's an ELO 1 in Washington, and still, I'm sure he still maintains his Massachusetts license.
Yeah.
But he can't reciprocate that to Oregon because of some archaic rule that says, well, no, if you reciprocated to get your license in Washington, that's as far as you can go. Even though the guy's got mad skills.
Yes.
And
agreed.
I can't use him as a journeyman to do high voltage work in Oregon unless he goes back through the apprenticeship program, which it's,
I know.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I totally do.
I'm just like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. If you knew
know.
how good this guy was, your brain would pop out of your head.
And they're just, I always, that same person, he and I both believe that everything's figure outable, right? Everything, there's got to be a way through. And that's one of those pieces that I feel like, we need to make sure that people can make a viable living, and we have to make it so that people can travel across states.
I agree. I don't disagree with you at all.
So it's such an interesting one. It's just, there needs to be some level where we can navigate the states and navigate work.
So you've looked at 10 states so far to see what's going on in these states and the difficulty.
And it's stunning how different they are.
Yeah. Hey, Mike here. I just want to do a quick shout out to all of our listeners. Now listen, it's been a wonderful couple of months getting the show moving, and we have seen a ton of growth, right? You guys are doing your part. People are downloading. You're telling people. That's super important to get this podcast on the map, okay? We've got good lineup of folks coming in the studio, and the biggest thing that I want you to know is that I want to hear from you. You, the person listening to this, all right? You want to be a part of this show. You want to talk about tips and tricks. You want to talk about things that you've learned in the trade. You want to talk about how this has changed your life. You want to talk about stuff like that, send me an email, okay? It's halfwattpod@gmail.com. And I'm interested in hearing about people who are in the union and people who are not in the union and people who are technicians and people who do alarm work and people who do camera access work, stuff like that. It doesn't just have to be fire alarm monkeys. It could be anybody. All right? So let's talk about this so that people can realize that this is a career that will change their life. And it's studying the quality of work. I've got a friend of mine who went to Oklahoma. So he's now, he's been on the podcast. So, and he and I talk a lot. He calls me a lot and he goes, "You're just not going to believe some of the stuff I see here." And because he was trained in Oregon, which we're pretty rigid the way we do things up here, he had no idea when he got to Oklahoma just how advanced what he was doing is. And the people in Oklahoma are going, wow, like we just don't see that kind of work in limited energy.
Wow.
And that's because they don't have a program for it. They have an apprenticeship and they have those kind of things going on, but they don't have the rigid rules that we worked under in the Northwest and the whole West, really. Yeah. And so, you know, it's an eye-opening thing to people down there, and he's really kind of cutting a major swath through them, and they're kind of stepping back, going, "Holy cow!" Like, and it just happens that I know one of the IEC people in the same state, and they've been trying to get those things implemented in Oklahoma for years. Okay. And so, you know, inadvertently, there's a kind of a pincer happening. You know, you've got a guy in the state who's phenomenal, and, you know, IEC who's going, we want phenomenal people. Yeah. You know, and so now it's a matter of going back to the state, lobbying the legislature, which takes a bit to say, hey, you know, we want to raise the standards. Well, why would you want to raise the standards? Well, I don't know. You tell me. Because I've been to states where you know, I'll pick on Louisiana. I thought, well, what kind of standards could Louisiana have? Phenomenally high standards, like really? Super high standards. It's you walk through the door. If you walk through the door in a restaurant in Louisiana, if they don't have the right color tag on the kitchen hood, they're not open, period. Why? Oh, I don't know. Everything catches on fire. The state's nothing but petroleum. So their standards are super high for fire extinguishment, for fixed systems, all that stuff. They are incredibly tough there. Texas, you screw up in Texas, they don't cite you, they arrest you. They have arrest powers. If you have a fire system that's down in Texas and you don't do the things you need to do, they will arrest you. So each state's got its motivator. Own. It could be it's just crazy. Yeah. The whole, I'm thinking of a joke right now, which I don't want any Texans to come beat me up, so I'll just keep it to myself. But, you know, each state has its own jurisdictional requirements and its own, you know, pros and cons. Yeah. And just because we happen to be in the Northwest, where both Oregon and Washington, and to some extent California, just have these super high standards. And I'm not saying that Idaho and Nevada and you know, Las Vegas obviously has, you know, crazy high standards at the MGM Grand, but it's damn interesting to see how come we can do something here that you can go 700 miles somewhere else and it's just a complete crap show. Same equipment hanging on the wall. Yeah. But this is put in by a drunken monkey, and this is not. What the hell's going on here? You know, why can't we get those standards nationwide?
And that is something that I'm really fascinated by, and I'm curious. I know there's other people. There have to be other people out that are trying to help with trying to level set things in different states and help bring some of that together. I've been stunned at how particularly reciprocal licenses are incredibly, I feel bad using this word, but it feels really arbitrary because there's a lot of states where I know there's really heavy requirements here to earn some things or there to earn some things, and yet they're not reciprocal in some states that have a lot lower requirements. And so it's like, is that just because you don't like us?
Right.
Or, what is that,
you're
right?
exactly right.
And so, I think one of the pieces that's so important, though, is how do we leverage other people working on this? How do we connect with them? And what can we do to help support both contractors and workers? Because I also think that there is so much importance to workers having flexibility and being able to move states if they want to move. And I know we had a technician up at our Bothell office who had been in the electrical field for 20 years, had been in the military, had been an electrician overseas for a decade, came back. Idaho was happy to give him a license. And Washington was like, yeah, I don't really understand what that is, and worked for years to try to get an electrical license and couldn't get it. Finally moved back to Idaho because he could work there. Yeah. And, those kind of things just do get really silly.
They do.
And so we have to find a better way.
Well, and I do know that, and not to pick on lobbyists or politicians or any of that jazz, but I do know that how the lobbyists work, how they affect change in a state's requirements, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. I mean, they've been trying for years to get NYSET 2 sprinkler requirement in the state of Oregon so that everybody's on the same page, and they'll eventually get there. But who pushes it, why they're pushing it? Are they pushing it because they want better sprinkler systems? Or are they pushing it because are we trying to raise the bar, or are we trying to make it more difficult? What's the goal here?
Yeah.
And you'll hear arguments from both sides.
I
to
know.
me, anytime we have a bar that's set, that I'm kind of fine with that because it eliminates, trunk slammers to some degree. And I have seen some real bizarre installations of things in this state, like in both sprinklers and because I work in both. In both sprinklers and in fire alarms, and sometimes the combination of the two. Like, how did this happen? Well, this happened because the bar is low in that particular jurisdiction or that particular subset. So I get it. I get why we want to do those.
Yeah.
But to find the lobbyists and then to make sure that money's going in the right pocket, to also make sure the money goes in the right pocket in the legislature, it's like, oh my God.
I know. It's incredibly complex. It's fascinating just to look at all the differences between states and go, wow, what do you do with that?
Yeah, how do you navigate that?
It's a pretty fascinating thing.
But those with the money navigate.
I know.
Much easier than those without.
And, that actually is something that I really do believe in. One of the things that I would really like to do with real work is also be an advocate. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important that workers have an advocate. And I know unions can provide that. Mm-hmm. I would love, frankly, to work with them as well. And really trying to figure out,
I would be shocked if they don't approach you at some point.
I hope to, because I would love to work with them as well. I think there's a lot of value we could add for them. And so it is something that I would really like to. And I've had some conversations with some interesting folks, particularly with the IBEW.
I would expect that they would probably endorse it when all their X's are, all their I's are dotted and all their T's are crossed. I could see them.
I think some of those would be so great to partner with, because I think that, again, there's strength in numbers and being able to really get as clear a picture as we can on the complexities so that we can illustrate that for somebody and hopefully make some changes down the road. I don't want to oversimplify that. I am well aware of how complex that is. One of the things that was fascinating to me in the state of Washington as well is just the differences in jurisdictions when it came to fire alarm designs, right? So if you're just talking a small little niche like that and now expand that out into other skilled trades, there's a lot of complexities there, but it doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't try.
I agree.
Yeah. So
the other trades, as I stumbled into a person I hope to have on the podcast in a couple of weeks, blew me away. She just blew me away. I went in to do something in a construction site, had a conversation with her, carpenter.
Okay,
is what she
cool.
is. And by the time I was done with the conversation, I was like, you've got to reach Gage. Here's my producer. I sent her an email and I told her why I think it's important.
Yeah.
Young lady, I every once in a while I run into somebody and obviously a carpenter. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Carpenter to me means hammers and nails, and of course there's no wood in a hospital, so it's all something else. whatever it is they do there. But the whole scene and what her story was, why I wanted her on the show, and why I've encouraged a lot of women to come on the show and talk is because this is a primarily male-dominated trade.
I'd never noticed. Oh, wait, that's a lie.
I know.
But there's a lot more women than there were when I started.
Yeah, a lot more.
A lot more.
And seeing them come into the trade and seeing them as tradespersons.
Yes.
And good ones. And some of my best interviews have been folks that we've either known, like when it worked for Convergent, when it works down on the coast that happens to be a relative of Tyler, and some other folks I've talked to. I bring them in to talk to them to go, look, okay, you don't have to spend your early 20s as a receptionist or as an Uber driver or working at a grocery store. Or you could parlay that into a career, then decide I'm going to go have kids or whatever you want to do with your life, because I'm certainly not here to say don't procreate or whatever it is folks do. But there's something in it when I see minorities, women, folks that have. I tell a story one time where I was working on a backflow, as I did that for a while here, and it's just in a small vault, not massive, just a small vault working on this thing, and this kid comes up and he starts talking to me, and he's Somali, and he goes, "Can I ask you a couple of questions?" I said, "Sure, absolutely." He says, "What college did you go to?" I said, "I didn't go to college." I talked to him, and he goes, "Well, I got to go to college to get work." And I says, I'm not saying you don't want to go to college. What I'm saying is that you're young. You obviously have a head on your shoulders. I explained what I did, and he goes, "Oh," like you could see it catch,
Yeah.
And I said, "Why don't you look at a trade, bend tin, solder pipe, something, put in roads. I don't care, but something where you're working with your hands." And I said, "Where'd you come from?" And he goes, "I came from Somalia." He goes, "Matter of fact, this whole complex is all Somali. We all happen to be in this one area. They happen to live in the same area." And I says, "Do you know anybody who's a Somali contractor?" He goes, "Yeah." I says, "Let's start there." So if you know somebody who's decent and they've got their toe in the door, let's get on with them. And anyway, the conversation only lasted about 20 minutes. And the kid literally stood back and was like, you could see the gears whirring in his head. I said, "Do something that gets you money now, legit money now, so that you don't fall into a life that isn't legitimate, whatever that may be, and then worry about affording college and those other things." I said, you had beautiful command of the English language. You understood exactly what I'm talking about. You have all 10 fingers and all 10 toes and both arms and both legs, and you're smart enough to get a handle on it. And he was like, "You're right." I'm like, "I know I'm right." So that to me was one of those moments where I was already teaching at the time, and I gave him my business card and told him how to get a whole IEC, and if you want to do electrical and all those good things. And so it's like that whole scene of being able to at least have speaks with somebody who legit was looking for an opportunity or a door and
didn't realize
didn't realize what was right in front of him.
Yeah,
And so you've made a connection. You know that you've opened up a door.
Yeah.
Same thing applies if I'm sitting, talking to somebody who's not involved with something. I'm like, dude, what have you considered this? No. There you go.
Yeah.
So being able to at least navigate to your site and looking at that and going, wow, look at all these, because like you said, it's not just electricians, right? You've talked to plumbers and other, what are some of the other trades that you've talked about?
Well, what's interesting is that I'll be honest, since my world had always rotated around commercial, it was always commercial construction. That was my first target, was I was thinking, well, of course, commercial construction needs this and blah. But I also have a lot of friends who are general contractors who do residential work. And as I started talking to them, I realized, oh my gosh, why am I not thinking of them? Because they're a really, they're such an important market, and they are, that is something that continues to grow. We need to service all the homes we have, and we need to continue to maintain and do the upkeep on things. And so it is an industry that desperately needs people. And so I expanded out, and it was like, oh my gosh, why have I not thought about all these other trades and these other parts and pieces that would help them? So through conversations with some of my GC friends, it was, oh my gosh, of course we could do that. Of course we could connect. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't. And so we really looked at the trades that are a part of construction, everything from drywall and painting to electricians, plumbers, and really any kind of trade that is, it's a craft, right? I laughed that I had a fine arts degree and that was what stepped me into it. But I got to tell you, I made some really killer battery calc drawings, and you would have laughed at how many times I draw big fancy risers up on the board when I was bidding for, a high rise, and how many colors I would do. They were very lovely risers. Yeah. But there is a great deal of art to the trades. And I also think the crafts.
It just dawned on me. You can hear the gears whirring in my head. I just went, shit, you're right.
Yeah,
no, you're right.
Because it's art. It's
an electrician who bends pipe. When that's a huge thing, and one of the guys I work with is really getting into bending pipe. So he'll go back and he'll look at it and go, man, look at this.
I know, right?
Picture. That's the artistry involved.
Yeah.
In getting all the saddle bends correctly and getting all the stuff right, and then piecing it back together and going, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, is a
Seriously.
huge thing. Electricians take that very seriously.
Absolutely. And that's something that I also, and it'll be a little piece that I won't talk about yet, but that is a really important thing to me, because I know early on when I started at PSI up in Bothell, we were itty bitty, and there were just a handful of us. And we got into this rhythm of where when the techs were out in the field and there was something that they'd done that they were particularly proud of, they would take a picture, it would get emailed to everybody else, and we'd all be like, whoa, that was so awesome, right? And that's something that I really respect, is the quality and the craftsmanship that really goes into that. So of course you'll also hear people talk about craftspeople, right? I really think that is a very true term as well, because there's so much art that goes into it. So I've always loved when somebody will, bring me over to show me what a fabulous job they did trimming up a panel with a whole bunch of circuits running in and how clean it is. And there's a real beauty to that.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. And the same thing happens with plumbers. Plumbers do the same work. They'll come back and look at what they've done and go, I did that. And you're like, damn, that's impressive.
I know.
It's really impressive, Right. So you've got the same thing there. And of course, I'll just pick on roofers. There are no roofers who roof with crooked lines. They look back and the lines have to be straight.
Yeah.
Why? Because the client doesn't expect them to look like Billy Bob down the street put it in.
Yeah.
So I mean, each one of those things, that's a good call.
And it's funny, I remember we had done a remodel, and we frankly got lucky because there was this really skilled tileman who usually did commercial and was usually, but had a little window where he was looking for other work. And so the general contractor that was working on our project brought him in, and man, just watching him put the tile together and the way he laid it out was amazing. I mean, did such a beautiful job. The eye that went into how he tiled and how all of the lines were so perfect, and the oh gosh, I'm forgetting the texture and the stone. Everything, the way he laid every one of those out was so beautiful and calculated. And so again, it's something that I think people overlook, but the crafts that go into that
I think you're absolutely right, and
people should feel proud of that work.
They should, because if you go back and look at what and I'll pick on masons, look at what a mason did 500 years ago when he trained an apprentice, and it was an apprentice to put in stones. The idea was at the very end of the day, you would get beautiful mosaics, and from if you look at mosques to churches to cathedrals and castles, that's exactly what you're seeing is the artwork and the functionality that went into that. Yeah. Those trades have been around since before time, began. So it's like, okay, the same exact craftsmanship, the same exact stuff, even up to like making wagon wheels. If you've ever seen anybody make a wagon wheel for a covered wagon or a wagon that they use like on the Oregon Trail and stuff like that, all those skill sets, blacksmithing, the whole 9 yards, all involve artistry at some point.
Exactly.
And that your game. And that you do better than the guy next down the street. So my horseshoes look like this, your horseshoes look like crap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole game.
But it is.
But it's exactly right.
And it's something that I think people overlook. Mm-hmm. And again, it all circles back to me to being seen for what you do, because the quality and the time that goes into the work that they do is something that's easy to overlook because people take it for granted. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of work. There are years of experience that go into that, and so that for me is another really important part of what will be a part of the platform.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're not limiting trades. It could be
expand it out.
Any trades.
Yeah.
And of course with that would go the licensing and the certifications that involve. And
there's some national certifications that go into some of those, and that again, it's actually been really fun for me to I've had some help researching, but it's been fascinating.
Business model opens up, and it really is. It can be pretty expansive. So if this takes off the way we hope,
when it does, no.
Well, no, I mean,
but yeah.
Starting non-tangible businesses from scratch is hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yes, I know.
I mean, it's a very hard thing.
Thank God I'm determined.
But it could, as this takes hold, then it could literally. You could bring on people and expand it to cover.
And for me, it really is like I am every bit that idealist that I feel like it's this group that's so important and isn't seen. And there is so much we could do to help support them and make their world better, but also support the contractors in that world as well. There's so much. And that for me is what is so exciting about it. I want to tell you one really quick story. It was years of me thinking through business ideas because I was determined to figure out something. Like something's got to be done. And I remember running an idea by an old friend of mine who is in the industry, and he looked at me at the end of it and he's like, "Yeah, that sounds like a really good nonprofit." And I was like, oh, okay, that's wrong. And it's like, and so finally I realized that if I really, to really make an impact, you need to think a lot bigger than that. And you really need to think outside of the box and where are the issues and what are things we could solve. And so for me, it started literally with a product manager who was in the technical world, who is a friend of mine, who helped me and spent months with me, you would have laughed, with sticky notes all over the walls of all the different places that we could help. And I was like, okay, Tracy, so you realize you cannot do all of this yet.
Right.
I'm like, okay, right. So it was a fascinating experience to first of all, no, let's shoot for the moon. What would it look like? and then to lay all of that out, and then to dial it down to what's a reasonable starting point. And so that is the product that's going to launch. We're due to launch on September 8th.
Okay.
And for me, it really is just, my motto has always been, it's all about the people. And I really genuinely believe that. And I really appreciated that you circle back to one of the collaboration stories at the beginning, because to me, collaboration is king. When you quit listening to the other players on your team, you lose things. You know, you have the tech in the field who sees a different perspective than the engineer working on the drawings in the office, right? And when you stop and think, oh, no, he over here, no, he definitely knows more than he over here, you've lost something, and you're probably going to make mistakes because of it, because you're not listening, because that's not real world. And so to me, there's also so much in all of the players that are on the team add value. And so it's never been like a pandering, oh, I should be really nice to them because, oh, hi, yeah, that's so cute, thank you. It really has always been a very genuine, everybody brings something to the table when you take the time to listen. And so that's just a really huge part of the mission for me is taking care of the people.
I'm kind of lost there for a second. Well, I mean, this is a mic
shoot
drop
for the moon.
Wham! No, it's you and I've obviously we've known each other and we've talked before, and we had a conversation a couple of months ago that centered around your love of people and how the trades are important to you, and we both realize that we kind of have the same vision. I'm affecting people in this way. This is why you're here, so that we can say, hey, folks, this could help you. This could help others. Socializing skill sets and matching employers and employees and helping the little guy get ahead and the big guy figure out where that little guy's at so that they can be a part of the machine that makes money. Because it's all about, boy, I'd love to say it's not, but this is capitalism, and capitalism requires capital, and that is what that is.
Yes.
So I know that, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but there is a way that you can invest into this if folks are interested. Did you want to talk about that? Or
one of the things that's also important to me is I am definitely every bit the corny rising tides should lift all the boats in the harbor, right? And so one of the things that I would love to do is to have this be a part of the workers as well, and have them be part of the ownership and small businesses, whatever that looks like. So it's interesting figuring out, because I'm not actually independently wealthy. So, figuring out how to create all of the infrastructure.
Me either.
I know. How to build it, how to do it right, has definitely taken a lot of effort and a lot of money. And I am so close to launch, but definitely could use some support with that. I decided to run a small WeFunder account.
What is the name of that? Crowdfunding? Is that,
I
know it's not the name crowdfunding, but it is a crowdfunding type.
It is. It's a crowdfunding mechanism, and one of the things that had surprised me because I've certainly been looking for investors and looking for some financial backing, and one of the things that I hadn't realized before I started all this is that to be able to do that, you have to be classified as an accredited investor in this country, and that means you have to be worth $1 million, and that can't be in property, and you have to make a certain amount. And so I would like to.
I think it hurt.
I know. Trust me.
Behind my eyes. You gotta be kidding me. What?
No.
An accredited investor.
Yeah. And so it limits.
What kind of crap is that?
Limits who can play, It limits who can play
Yeah.
by a lot. And so what I found is that that's
Sorry.
where no, trust me. I know. Welcome
Are
to
you
my
an
2
accredited
years.
investor? Yes. Let me show you my accreditation in my pocket.
That was an interesting one for me. So, and I have had some lovely folks that I've worked with in the past who wanted to invest and wanted to be a part. And so the only way that I could do that is running a crowdfunding campaign. That's the only way that anybody who's not accredited can actually invest. So, yeah, I've learned a lot in the last 2 years. But anyway,
so I take it the uber rich billionaires hadn't called you and dropped a cool million on you.
I don't
yet?
know where they are. I don't know. I'll keep
Me
looking.
either.
Yeah.
Too busy putting signs on their building they have to take off the next day.
Or maybe building. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's a thing. And so
smart like rock, fast like tree. Uh-huh.
I'm really and honestly, down the road, I'd always intended on doing some kind of a crowdfunding. Though I'd always hoped that this could be about more than your traditional corporation in this country. No offense. No, that was wrong. It is. I do mean offense.
You mean where all
time
the profits go to the people on the top and then the people on the bottom just work
I
their
think
asses
you've
off
heard
and
of
don't
it.
make
You've
any
heard of
money?
that,
Yeah.
correct?
I sure
and
have.
I really wanted to figure out, and I still do. I want to find a path forward where I'm actually not looking to buy my own personal island. Like, that's not what I aspire to. I really genuinely am corny enough that I really want to help a lot of people. And to do that takes financing. Mm-hmm. But what I would really love to do down the road is I would love for more people to play a part of it and be able to benefit from that. So I'd always intended on doing it, did not intend to do it so early. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing a very private crowdfunding round where it's just like friends, family. Yeah. But I would absolutely love anybody's support. Though. Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, you're the best.
Well, it had like an option. I was like,
oh.
So I did that. I can't.
Oh, cool.
I can't figure out exactly where the hell it's at. But if you go to my LinkedIn account, it should be there
cool.
somewhere.
Thank you, Mike. That's awesome.
But I don't. Because I put some money in. So I mean,
I know. I appreciate that, by the way.
Well, you know me, I'm so well off. But no, I put something in there just so that it's like, something that pushes it forward.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's so important to me. I live in such a happy land, which also used to kind of be a joke at the office. But I hope to. I aspire to bring some of that to life. Okay. So. Of course, help is appreciated, but I really
how do they
hope
find
to
the
do
crowdfunding
that.
site?
So
the We.
Yeah, it's on a site called WeFunder. WeFunder.
Because I saw it in the email you sent, so
yeah,
that's where I got there.
I'm trying to think of the best way, because I know everybody's going to want to run right out and do that. The nice thing about the crowdfunding is that it allows as little as $100 on up to $10,000, and any intervals in between. So it really is there to be very accessible for anybody who wants to contribute. And so it's WeFunder, and then it's Real Work. And I want to say it's a hyphen. I'm trying to think of where I can kind of post that so that somebody can see it. But would love to have anybody. Well, the merrier,
man. You can email me at mike.k7esm@gmail.com. I'll say that again. Mike. That's a period. Mike.K7ESM. That's Kilo 7 Echo Sugar Mexico. That's my ham call. Don't mess that up. At gmail.com. And if you cannot spell at gmail.com, you should not be listening to this podcast. So anyway, Mike.K7ESM. And I can send you the link if you want.
I appreciate you.
I'll look at my email. I'm
like,
oh God, what happened now? But I would love to have people at least chip in. We all can afford, $100. Give me a break. So, I mean, that's a bag of groceries nowadays. Jeez.
Yeah.
So, I would like to help, get the thing going.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I think that and my beautiful mug is on your site. So, because I'm, I kind of full disclosure, right? I'm a sort of a. Do
I get to say it?
Yeah. What is it?
You're an advisor, which is a really cool position.
I'm an advisor.
Yes.
Let that be a lesson to you, non-advisors. No, I'm just. I don't. There's no monetary gain here. I'm just there to kind of help guide. I'm the guy who kind of helps make the interface between labor and
yes, and the thing that I wanted to throw out there for everybody about Mike though too is that you and I are very aligned when it comes to looking out for people.
Yeah.
And so that's something you and I have in common. And it's something that I think is so important that there is someone who is really looking out for the workers.
Yeah.
And as much as I've been on both sides.
Because when we talked about it, we realized we were both like, we're never going to be gajillionaires at this game.
Because
we're just not.
Right. And also because that's not our,
no.
There's so much to life. There's so much we could do.
There's so much more to life than that.
Yeah.
There's so much more to life than that.
And there's so many great things that I really feel like we can do with this. So that's a really important thing to me to bring visual, I want people to see the trades and appreciate what they do.
And I want to see this be successful. It's just like this podcast. I don't do this podcast to, for any other reason than I want to help get the word out, talk about limited energy, talk to folks like you, help the guy behind the glass make his dream come true, and help the other guy behind the glass not trip over his own shoelaces. He's not hearing me.
He'll play it back. He'll know.
But, and it really, this is important to me. It's important to me because I don't have an axe to grind here, and I don't have a whole lot. Like I seriously don't. Like I want to go through this earth affecting as many people as I can, and no one remembering my goddamn name at the end of it. Excuse me for swearing, folks, but I want people to understand that there's a way to live that doesn't involve crushing the skulls of children to get to the top.
Yeah.
There's just simply a better way to live that's just helping people out and providing information, providing support. I'm still providing phone support to technicians who get stuck on problems. I still to this day helping folks out that I haven't seen in years, that call me up, then they know my number, call me up and go, or email me, go, can we talk? Because I'm baffled with this and I don't want to go to my boss. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, bend over backwards to the point that my wife goes, really? What? So that's why you and I are the same.
Exactly.
And that's why I absolutely said,
we would be so much better off if more people
thought that way.
Yeah. I also think it's just so important to see people and appreciate and treat each other with respect, right?
Yeah.
So it is where I want that tide to rise, and I just think there's so much opportunity to help, and I really believe we can do it.
You know that?
I know we totally
I should have gotten a liberal arts degree.
That's okay. I already did for us both. And I can make a mean riser diagram. Yeah.
I super appreciate you coming down today
Thanks so
to
much.
talk to me. This is I got goosebumps. So I think I hope when this hits the streets that it gets out in time for folks to be able to at least look at the site, get an idea. If they want to throw some money Tracy's way for the business, then feel free to do it. We've already hit on that.
And one other piece, can I throw in? Also, if you go to Real Work, I know, right? If you go to realwork.com, if you might have interest in signing up down the road, it's going to be free for workers. There's no, I'm not tying you into stuff.
So who's paying for? How is this?
Well,
what?
So you know what? Yeah, what I really want to do. So there's a couple things, just to be totally candid, is that really I ultimately want to create a hiring platform that'll benefit employers. By the way, you also as a worker, you can set up either a public profile or private. So you don't, just because you're on there, people can't necessarily find you unless you want them to.
So if we get a profile and my boss finds out about it, he's not going to fire me. Okay.
Yeah. So if you are at a company and of course not to say anybody would feel this way, but if you're at a company and you're looking and you'd like to find a job somewhere else, you can keep your profile private, but you can still get notifications on things that match your skills and your licenses. But you can actually go to the site and you can say, notify me if it's something that you think you'd be interested in signing up for or looking at how to set up a profile. And like I said, we're launching on September 8th. And if you just do that, click on notify me, then we'll make sure that we send out an email to you when the site launches so that you know. But we would love to have as many people on there as we can. We really, like, again, in case you can't tell, I'm a total bleeding heart. Mm-hmm. But I really do believe we can do a lot of good.
So let me see if I get this right. So laborers, tradespeople, doesn't cost them a dime.
Correct.
They can put their information in there, and then it helps the pool, obviously.
Correct.
So then employers who are looking for people are where the money's coming from.
Correct. And also the other thing, to me, the mission really is about supporting people. So if there are things that we can add that add value, one of the things that I would love to do is add links to training platforms and things like that so people can get their CEUs, or links to trade schools where there are programs that could help them. So I really do want to provide access to information for them, things that help you increase your earning potential or maybe help you decide which career path you want to take.
So CEUs for license renewals and for certifications,
correct,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, and for OSHA trainings like
right.
that. If you want to earn an OSHA training,
30 and all those good things. So then, let me see if I get this right. So if I
want to simplify for them,
right,
yeah,
but it's not helping. Is it showing you for example, since I have a Washington and Oregon licenses, I go to Washington's LNI site to see what the requirements are for my CEs. You're not posting CEs for people or doing anything like that, correct?
Not yet.
But that's part of it.
Correct.
Oh,
so
seriously?
we've been collecting websites. We've been collecting, okay, where would you go to renew that license? Where do you need to go? So really, there's just so much we could do to have fun.
Yeah. No, it opens up.
And as we go,
big.
there are features and things that we'll add. And if it does get to that point, there probably will be a paid tier for the app where it kind of like a LinkedIn, I guess, for some of that. But but it would have to be things that we add value to, and if there's value to you, then you'd pay for that app. But all of the basic features of the product for workers are free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah. I just did my renewal for Washington, and the company I used for my and by the way, the new NEC this round is incredibly changed. It's
it's
good.
I think I've heard that. Okay.
It was the first time I've done continuing ed on the NEC where I literally sat back and went, damn, I'm learning stuff, and it's all high voltage crap. It's not like I'm going to work in it, but the changes that they made and why they made the changes, and the website that I used, I had to change from the company I usually used. I went to a new one. And if you want to know what it is, I don't want to plug anybody here, but you can email me or text me or something. But I was flat impressed with the way that my CEUs were held. And the last company, I had to pay 25 smackers after I did my continuing ed to then get my hours reciprocated to Oregon, because Washington requires 24.
Okay.
4 of them are Washington only. So that meant that the rest of them were on things that I could move over, like Arc Flash and what have you.
Yeah.
So the other company would move 20 hours of CEs over to Oregon for me, but I had to pay for that service.
Right.
And which is not a huge deal. $25 isn't going to break you. But I wound up doing code change, and I did, I think, photovoltaics or something, and then the Washington WAC RCW. But this company just took 8 hours and applied it towards the Washington license, or the Oregon license. So I just have the 8 hours, which is the minimum requirement, which even though I have almost 2.5 times the CEs, it just not that big of a deal. For free, they just gave it to Oregon, which is like, wow, okay, good.
Yeah.
So I got a good product.
Yeah.
I learned something from it and was able to apply it to my Oregon license. And then boom, I just
That's
did my
very cool.
renewal. So it cost me less to do my Oregon stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, Washington's got a steeper requirement, so I did all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I came away from it kind of a winner. And
Yeah.
so I felt like,
So much smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was pretty jazzed with the whole thing.
I look forward to. I'll be curious about that one too, because I'm really curious about where there are spaces where we can connect dots. So where there are companies that are doing things like that, rather than reinventing the wheel, I would love to partner with some of those companies to help bring those features. But using training platforms that are already there, using different things, I really feel it's important to connect the dots. So it doesn't mean that we're going to do everything fresh from scratch. It means that if there are companies out there doing a great job with trainings for OSHA, by all means, I would love to connect with them and help connect those workers to those platforms.
Okay.
So that is another piece that'll be fun.
Nice.
Because I think it's all fun.
I think it's all fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming and hanging out with me today. That was
Diesel's over
awesome.
here telling me that
Diesel-
we're good. Diesel's like, it's
Diesel,
time.
my dog, my big old German Shepherd. And we
Very
made
awesome
friends
dog.
with him.
That's good.
He comes to the studio with me to make sure that I'm safe.
I very much appreciate everybody's time and letting me come and chat and share my idealism.
Anytime.
But I know I'm in good company.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, have a great day.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to the Half Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.